All right, there we go. Hi, everyone. It's Sarithkin and Antir, and I'm here with Duke Torgul of Antir, who reigned in the 80s and is pretty much a legend of Antir. And I'm very excited to have him on. And I have some really cool old pictures too. So you've watched some of these before, Your Grace. So you know that we usually start with your origin story, how you found the SCA and where and when. So if you want to start there, that would be great.
Sure, thanks. Well, growing up, it was always knights and Vikings and the Iliad and the Odyssey, Howard Pyle, the movie The Vikings, The Warlord. That's what I was interested in. And in about 67 or 68, my brother, Mike, who was 6 years older than me, he found the SCA. We were living in the Bay Area, in Castro Valley. And so I would tag along with him to fighting practices and tournaments. And I went to House Chaos a couple times. And we would fight in the backyard. He'd practice on me. We made cardboard armor for me. And
how old were you?
Well, 67, 68. So I was 7 and 8.
Okay.
And his name in the SCA was Malice of the Shamrock.
Okay.
And he, for instance, in the original Fighter's Handbook, there's a Spangenhelm design. He's the guy that wrote that article.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. And then, so back in the day, I met a number of the guys, although they wouldn't remember me, and I'm unclear on names, but I remember like John Lean. I'd certainly met James, Houghton, people like that. I was a little kid.
Wow.
And then, I was, my family moved overseas for a few years, and I wasn't back till I was 17. And when I got back, we moved to Seattle. And so then I joined up in the drum.
How did you find it in Seattle?
Oh, well, I'd met a few of the people before. We were in Seattle briefly right before we left.
Okay.
So, and my brother was living in Seattle when I moved back. He didn't come with us. So my brother was living in Seattle, and he continued fighting in the drum.
Oh, that's cool.
So right away, as soon as I got back, first thing I did was start making armor. Made a chainmail shirt and cobbled together the rest of it. I had a helmet that we'd made when I was a kid from an old civil defense helmet with a baseball catcher's mask. And just started going to practice up at Theodolph Borogroves with Seamus Peacemaker.
Thorin.
Yeah.
That's cool. So did you teach yourself metalwork then?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I took some classes at a local arts sort of community center. Learned casting and acid etching and stuff like that there. But most of my earlier stuff was pretty much self-taught.
Cool. And you made all your own armor?
Always. Okay. Always except for helmet shells. I don't really have very good welding skills.
Okay. I don't know what that was. Were you squired to someone in Antir?
I was squired to Morgan of Aberystwyth.
Okay.
But I never really fulfilled any squire functions. Basically, when I started to get good enough that council was talking about me, at one point Morgan came up to me after council and he said, you've been discussed, and the consensus is that unless you're a squire, we're not going to go any further than that. So how about if I make you a squire? You don't have to do anything, because I understand you won't, basically. But that was cool. And I don't think he even, if I remember, I don't think he gave me a squire's belt or anything. But he did give me his belt when I got knighted. So that's cool.
Oh, that's cool. So did you start out fighting sword and shield?
Yeah, 24-inch round, strap down, and sword.
Cool. And is that what you were fighting with your brother down in the Bay Area too?
Well, not really, sort of. Just, I mean, it was just cardboard toys.
Okay. Okay. And when you were starting fighting in Seattle, who were some of your contemporaries that you were coming up through the ranks with?
Well, coming up through the ranks, it was Garen, Pick Rate, Dak. Um, there was a fellow named Yorick. I mean, quite a few people.
Cool. How long did
Grendel.
it? Oh, Grendel.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get knighted once you got sort of serious into fighting when you got back?
I came back in '78, probably, and I was knighted in '81.
Okay. And what kind of training were you doing between 78 and 81?
Just fighting.
Just fighting?
Yeah.
Okay. And you are credited in Ontier with basically inventing High Guard. Yeah. So can you tell me about that and like what was the inspiration for that? And
Sure. Well, at the time, what did you call it? The golden edge or the glorious edge or something like that?
oh, the Noble Edge.
The noble edge, right? At the time, we were taught, this, sword straight down the back, or maybe here, got your elbow in your hip, and you rotate your round shield up and down, and you strike with the sword and block with the shield. And after a while, I switched over to a mace. I had a long mace, about like 28 inches long, with a very narrow, long head on it. And I just wasn't very good at the sword work. So what I would do is just charge people and smack into them, and then just do a bunch of flailing blows. And that was kind of my technique for the first maybe year and a half. And I had to get through this, what I thought of as the danger zone, where the people with longer swords, and in particular a Whedon, who fought a lot with a glaive, I had to get through that and get up close to him. So I started crouching down and putting the mace up here to block blows and to intercept the glaive on the way in and keep contact with it. And because it was a mace, there was that general perception that you weren't supposed to block with the sword. And in Ontier, it wasn't really like a super hard convention, but it was there, kind of, the idea that you don't. And with a mace, you could, though, because it was supposedly iron bound or steel. So I started doing that, and it started working fairly well, and I started getting better at it and being a little more considered than just charging in and smashing into people and flailing. And from that, kind of developed the high guard. At first, when I was doing it, I'd go in this high guard position, and then I'd pull back once I got in and start throwing. But I figured out over time that I could throw from here and throw a good shot with the mace. And over that time, also, I put a D guard and a finger trigger on the mace. And then after a while, people said, you're getting pretty good, but you're never going to get any better, and you're never going to win tournaments, and you're never going to get knighted if you don't fight with a heater and sword, because that's what knights fight with. And I thought, yeah, that's probably true. So I made myself a heater, and I made a sword, but I made it kind of short, just a little longer than my mace. And I put a D guard and a finger trigger on it and a big counterweight. And I just kept the same style, kept with the high form. And in Ontier, either because we were still a principality then, either in Ontier, it was either because we were a little bit looser than the West, or because nobody noticed, because I was just sort of using the same style as I had been. Nobody really objected to the high form. But when I went and fought with people from the West, so people from Mists in California, they immediately objected and said, well, that's the Iron Chicken, and you can't do that. Because as they explained it to me, there had been a person or persons who had been doing the Iron Chicken, which they described as bracing your sword on your shield, or in fact, resting it on the side of your head like this. And so they said they'd made a convention against it and I couldn't do it. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not bracing it on my shield and I'm not bracing it on my head. I'm in fact parrying and returning shots. And they said, well, that's all very well and good, but it would still break your sword. And I said, well, how do Florentines walk then, etc. And so it went around and around for a while, and people like Steigerman and Alfred kind of backed me up. And eventually it was decided that they would allow it, but if they caught me bracing it on the shield or on my head, or if the sword was driven back into my shield or my head, it would still be ruled broken and they were going to keep their eyes on me.
Ooh.
So
So no anviling. I think that's what they called it, anviling, when you would, you know, brace it or whatever. But you didn't brace it. It was more dynamic, right?
Well, it's a parry. It's a way to direct their sword and then to come back with a return.
Right. Right.
And then the next thing I ran into from that was a period of a year or two where I was told on a regular basis that it's impossible for you to throw a shot from the high guard that's hard enough. And I, in fact, had an experience several times where I'd go out in the list and my opponent, generally somebody from down south, would come up to me as we were getting ready to go. And he would say, if you're going to do that high guard thing, I just want you to know I'm not going to take anything from the snap, from your high guard snap, because it's just not possible. And there were a couple of occasions where, with a particular fella, basically, I hit the guy 4 or 5 times, and in the end, the crown had to come out and basically tell him, look, you're embarrassing yourself, because it's clear that he's hitting you hard enough, right? It's obvious to us. And then that kind of gradually just faded away over time as more and more people started fighting high guard. And people just accepted it as a form.
So did you figure out for yourself when you were using it with the mace how to do power generation from up there?
Yes.
And how did you troubleshoot that for yourself?
Well, I've been thinking about this. Basically, if I come in and I throw a combo, and so I'm coming up in the high guard, and I pull back and I throw bang, bang, and then maybe I'm going to come around again, right? What I learned as I got better was it was nice to hesitate on that last one. So you throw the first 2, and then maybe you pull back a little bit. Maybe you're starting to retreat, and then you sort of pause, but you're still all tightened up in exactly the same way that you would be if you would just continued it through, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So, right. So you're sort of freeze at that moment, and then you just uncoil all the built up energy from, and it's just a hesitation. And then I learned to be able to do that from a standing start.
And you had said earlier that you were using a D guard and a trigger and a counterweight.
Yeah.
Were the D guards commonplace at that time?
When I started, we had just started to see them. We were all using cross hilts when I started, and then D guards just sort of started being used, and I just put one on my mace because I got my knuckles wrapped a few times, and then somebody suggested, hey, I saw this finger trigger thing, you should try that, and I did that.
Cool. And what was it that you liked about the counterweight? Do you like a basket heavy sword, or?
I like an extremely heavy sword,
okay.
And I would always make my swords as massive as I could. They were short, but they were very heavy. And back then, you know, the rattan in Seattle, there was like one place to get it, and you got
Northwest
what you
Pain
got.
Supply.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got what you got. So you got lucky and you got a 2-inch one and you shaved it down to 1.25 inches, or you got this crooked little 1.25 inch stick and you built it up with webbing. But I really like a sword that's, you know, wide and 1.25 inches thick and as wide as I can make them.
Yeah. Did you find when you switched to the heater that I mean, what was the difference for you, and did you like it?
I did. Um, it obviously well, not obviously, but it covered a lot better, you know. You know, and I fought with a heater from 80 through probably 87 or 8 is when I switched over to center grip, and you know that was my go-to. You know, it's my go-to, and yeah, I did very much.
Okay. And when you were coming up before you got knighted, was it culturally acceptable in Ontario for squires to fight in crown, or unbelts to fight in crown?
Oh yeah.
Or I guess it was cornet back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, everybody fought in everything.
Okay.
I think the day. Yeah, it wasn't a. It was they were, you know, the big important tournaments and everybody wanted to fight in it. You know.
What besides cornet and crown were the big tournaments back then?
Champions and Eagles. Eagles for sure. Eagles was the non-crown event that was the biggest event of the year. It was really important to go to Eagles, and it was important if you were if you wanted to be a top fighter to be in it and to final or win in it.
Okay. Did you ever have a problem with like mental prep for tourney, or anything like that?
Outside of a couple things where unrelated stuff was interfering in my life, no, I'm cool with that.
Okay. Do you have an athletic background at all?
Not in any organized sports, but when I was overseas, I spent all my time snorkeling and spearfishing and canoeing, and I credit that with stamina from lung capacity, because I was diving deep, and probably eye-hand coordination.
Very cool. So when you got knighted, was that a surprise?
I mean, I was anticipating it. I was, you know, pretty much jonesing for it. No.
So it was a goal.
Yeah, I totally. I mean, you know, yeah, that's all I ever wanted was to be a knight, and all I ever wanted was to be a duke. Those are my goals.
Cool. Duke Sven asks if you modeled yourself after any particular fighter when you were coming up, or who were your influences besides your brother?
Well, I mean, Steingrim and Thorin were the guys that I thought of as the best fighters in my immediate circle, and the guys that, you know, yeah, they were the guys that I admired the most in Ontario, for sure.
And I know that you traveled to foreign wars a lot. Did that start happening after you got knighted, or were you guys doing that before?
My first foreign event was 20 year.
Okay.
And then after that, I went to one Pennsic as a fighter, and I went to probably at least 6 or 7 Estrellas.
Okay. So
Probably
I've heard a lot of stories about 20 year, and a lot of them involve you. So what's your favorite 20 year story?
Favorite 20 year story?
Yeah.
You want me to really be honest?
Yeah.
Okay. There were 10 tournaments over 10 days. I entered every one that I could, except for scheduling conflicts, and I won every one.
Wow.
There we go.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is that where the war god of Trimaris came from, or is that from somewhere else?
That was from Penzic.
Okay. Well, it's kind of early for that story because I'm guessing you went to Penzic as Crown. Yes?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, why don't you tell us that story? Because it's one of the things that anybody in Ontier hears, and I have no idea what the real story is.
See, now you're asking me about something I really have no memory of.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Penzic.
I'll
No,
have to ask somebody else.
we fought with Trimaris, and I remember we teamed up with these guys who's a group who I don't remember them, but the thing I remember about them is that they were a lot like us. They were Vikings, and they had really decent armor, and they were cool guys, and they were good fighters. And we fought alongside them the whole time in the big woods battle. I went with a group of those guys and maybe 20 of us, and we fought through the whole thing, and we almost all of us lived through the entire thing, and we killed a lot of people. And then at the end, the final horn or whatever was sounding, so there's like a minute left or whatever, and we went out in a glorious charge and got slaughtered. It was great.
Nice. And then the nickname just followed?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I really don't.
Maybe it was like a drunken carousing at night, and yeah.
There was some of
that. So I want to go back to 20-year for a second, because winning like every tournament you enter at something like that, where like the best of the best are there, how did that feel? And were people asking you to teach them your style?
Yeah. Well, so it was in '86, right? So I was 25. I've been a knight for 5 years, and I'd pretty much been going more or less undefeated during that time. I certainly had lost a few, but I'd had a pretty good streak. And so I was in really good physical shape. I had a lot of experience. I was still young, all of that.
Right.
But then the real deal was the high guard snap. It was immediately apparent that very few people outside of the West Coast group of people had seen it before. And it was just opponent after opponent. They would come in, they would leave their head wide open, and I'd single shot. And then afterwards, they would get up and, they'd say, "How did you do that? I just didn't even see you move." So.
Super cool. I mean, one of the things I think is so cool about High Guard, and you sort of changing people's perspectives, is it sort of, not only is it a different stance, but it's a different way to generate power, right? It's a lot more about stick mechanics and
right.
like the fulcrum point of your hand, right? And less
right.
about your hips, which is one of the reasons why the High Guard snap is deceptive, right?
Right. Well, it's about pulling. I think it's about pulling down with the entire side of your body, and so back in the day when we were taught this, right, it was all about these big circular moves, and you were trying to preserve momentum the entire time. And what this was about was editing that down to just this movement and getting the speed by rotating the tip. I know you guys all know this by now, but getting the speed by rotating the tip. And people would tell me, "Well, I'm not going to take it because it's all wrist or it's all arm," right? You're not, and it's exactly the opposite, right?
Right.
It is all body.
Right.
The only thing my arm is actually doing is steering.
Exactly.
And right, by rotating the tip around and then decreasing the radius of the curve, it accelerates really fast. And there it goes. And then, yes, you can power it through at the end if you really want to smack the guy hard. But it's really all about getting your body to just pull the sword down.
Right, because it's about bringing the power through your foot and through your core, right? Yeah.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. Um, um, so Christopher Houghton says that you also had an amazing offside leg shot.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's right.
Because you're all wound up for it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to see if, okay, that's just a story. All right. So let's go back to when you got knighted. Did you have a vigil or was it a field knighting?
No vigil, not a field knighting. I think I actually have very little memory of it. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I even had to check, and I should have known, but I think it was Stanger that knighted me, right? We were still part of the West. I believe it was pretty much, do you have a decent tunic? Let's go. Because of course I didn't.
And you got the chain from Morgan. Who gave you a belt?
Morgan gave me the belt.
Morgan gave you a
And
belt.
I'm sure I don't remember.
Oh, okay. I got that confused.
It was certainly a lamp chain.
It was a lamp chain. Nice.
Yeah.
So about a year after you got knighted, you won your first crown, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Was that on purpose? Was that something that you were gunning for?
Oh yeah.
Did you change your training at all to go for that crown, or were you always doing the same thing and trying to be the best fighter to be?
Just always doing the same thing. Just always fighting as hard as I could, and then what I like to do is I never used a Pell. What I like to do is what I liked to do was find, well, in several of the places I have lived, there have been vacant lots, or in one case, it was a pioneer cemetery. And I would just take my sword and shield and I would just run around in the woods and attack trees.
Fun.
Do that for, an hour.
So cardio and sword work and everything.
There you go.
Yeah. Fun. When you were living in Madrona, and you were living in Madrona when you reigned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who were the people at your fight practices?
Well, we had in Madrona, we had the what is it, the East Lake Bridge practice. It's a basketball court down underneath the East Lake drawbridge, and that was a really, really great practice. I credit that practice with basically everything. It was a tough practice, and we fought hard. And there was just something about being in the basketball court with the lights and the chain link fence in the cold or whatever that just made it really good. And so there was like people I've mentioned, Garen and Dak, obviously, Pickrate, Clifford, Skeggy, Thorin.
Yeah,
quite between memory, I can't name them all, but it was a bunch of really tough fights, and there wasn't a lot of training that went on. We just fought, and we fought really hard, and then it would be like you're holding your shield too low, right? Or get your corner up, or just advice kind of as you're going along, and that basically we just fought. There weren't any drills or anything like that.
Okay. Did you also have private practices on the weekends, or was it like fight at East Lake and then event every weekend?
That was it.
Okay. And back then, in addition to Eagles, there attorney in Seagirt that also everyone went to. I can't remember.
Oh, there was Secret Champion.
Yeah.
Secret Champion. Yeah, that was fun because you got to go to Victoria and ride the ferry boat.
So tell me about the first crown you won, if you remember.
The first crown I won was in Canada somewhere, I think. And yeah, I mean, my first two reigns. I was fighting for this one lady. I was gonna fight for Anhrad, and then that blew up. So I fought for this other lady, and I won the crown. And then she's like, she wasn't there. And then I like call her on the way home. Hey, I just won crown. She's like, oh, I didn't think you were gonna win.
Oh.
Yeah. So she backed out, and then the powers that be agreed that Anhrad could be the queen.
Oh, that's cool. So
Yeah.
You didn't have to abdicate.
Not the first time.
Right. So which one did you have to abdicate? Was there one between the two?
Yeah, there was
yeah.
a second one. That was the crown of the burning snows.
What does that mean? That sounds very poetic.
The burning snows. Oh, that's a great Ontario story. It was out in eastern Washington somewhere, and there were those cottonwood trees that shed that fluff, and it was spread all over the ground. And that night, a certain person, who we know it is, and maybe we'll confess, apparently said, dude, I wonder if this stuff would light on fire.
Oh, great.
And then this spreading flame, like an alcohol flame, kind of went across the ground.
Oh, great.
I don't think anything bad happened. It was just, yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard that story. That's a good one.
Oh, really?
No, I've never heard it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. I was going to pull up some of the pictures so we can talk about them. So let me do that. All right. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right. Is that your first one?
Yeah, I guess it'd have to be.
Okay.
Yep.
So it looks like there that you're actually wearing the crowns you made, or you are, but she's not, maybe.
Yeah, I had to make a personal crown because I think we were still using the old Ontario crowns, and they didn't fit me. They're too small by far.
Oh.
So I made a personal crown for myself. Yeah.
So did your personal crown become the Ontario crown? Or did you?
It is similar in appearance, but it doesn't have any cast work on it or anything. It's just acid etching in brass.
Okay, cool. I do have pictures of the Ontario crowns, and I would like to talk to you about like what your influences were and stuff because they're so iconic. But let's go through some of these pictures first.
Apparently they're shooting an apple off my head.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my probably second iteration of armor.
Wow. So
yeah. That's the old helmet still. That's a baseball catcher's mask with, okay, so baseball catcher's mask, the gaps are too big to be legal. So what we did, my brother and I, is we got some 1/4-inch rod from Ernst Hardware and we wired them down over to reduce the size, and we lashed them on with brass wire. But then for extra security, we put JB Weld over all the joints. Oh, and then when we went to get it inspected, the marshal looks at it and he says, are these wired on? And we go, yeah. And he says, but you covered them with JB Weld, right? And we said, well, yeah. And he says, well, that stuff will hold anything. We're good.
And did it hold?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wore that helmet until my friends got so embarrassed that they bought me a Steingram helmet.
Nice. Nice. All right.
I don't know
So,
what's going on there.
okay.
That's probably an Everclear. I think I'm probably challenging somebody.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's me in my best kind of period.
it's very, the high guard, and it's kind of iconic. Is that one of the helmets that you decorated?
That's my first helmet that I made. Yeah, that's decorated.
And when did you get into doing that? Because you are very well known for that. And a lot of the Dukes I've talked to, when I ask the question of, if your dream helm, a lot of them still say a Torgul helm.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
They don't even, they are so shabby compared to the stuff that I'm seeing today, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably probably around 90 is when I started doing those. I did one for me, and then I started doing them for other people, and then pretty soon I was making a bunch of them, really.
Yeah. It's very cool. Here's another one.
Yeah, it's Clifford Barter. He was my squire, and then a knight. I can't figure out why I'm holding a cross-hilted broadsword there, though. That's funny.
Yeah. I don't know.
Those,
Another
yeah,
one.
pants over the pants over plastic legs, which is finally what I settled on as being the best solution.
Who started the whole sort of Viking Varangian look, and the horsetails and everything?
Oh, I'd say that was kind of just it just sort of came up naturally between in the beginning of the Varangian Guard. So Steingrim, me, Skag, etc. Um, the you know it was just sort of the look that we developed.
Well, it definitely made a huge impression on the kingdom. I mean, the kingdom is still very Viking centric. Um,
Uh-huh.
so it's very cool because what you guys did at the time was sort of elevate the armor standard and the camp standard, and the clothing standard, and that's super cool. The way that you sort of shaped the culture of the kingdom that way.
Well, looking good on the field and actually wearing armor was always really important. Even if you look back at those first pictures where I look really goofy with the the ones where I was with the apple on my head. I mean, even if you look at that, I mean, I'm wearing actual armor because I always thought that was important.
Cool.
I don't want to be out there in athletic gear with a tabard over it and tennis shoes. I want to be in actual stuff.
Yeah, and I think that by doing that, you sort of inspire other people to raise their own bar, um, which is cool. So Sir Martin asks about making armor in the Evergreen Metal Shop.
How does Martin know about that?
He says that in 91, he made armor there and the metal shop manager still remembered you.
Yeah. No, I made, okay. When I went to Evergreen, they had that sort of free form study thing. You can design your own thing. So what I did is I wrote a bunch of papers on Agincourt era, and I built a full suit of plate.
Wow. I think I have a picture of that.
Yeah, it's not very good suit of plate, but yes, I did.
There, that one.
There it is. Yep.
Super cool. So you made that at Evergreen as like part of your senior project or something?
Yeah, for it.
Very cool. Look how thin you are. Wow.
I know. I'm still that thin. No, no. That's in Dak's basement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's got it on a stand. It's sitting in his basement.
His Grace just said that too. That's still displayed at Dak's house. That's cool. All right, I'm gonna go back because. All right, so that's where we were, and that's you and Thorin.
Yeah, and there's Jerry Guillaume de Albert.
Cool. Another of you and Thorin. Were you and Thorin sort of like the top two at the time?
Sort of, more or less, but not really. I mean, it was a bigger pool than that.
Okay.
But Thorin and I were always, rivals. In, I mean, I'd say he was the most dangerous fight of the local people in Ontario for me, because he's an excellent and deceptive swordsman.
Well, yeah.
And I knew that if I made a single mistake, he was going to nail me. On the other hand, to be frank, I had him on height and reach and strength, right? So kind of balanced each other out, and it was always a guess for me. He was one of those guys where I was not confident of victory, which.
Yeah, he's so precise and so very good at his timing.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is your first reign again?
Yeah, it's probably Bell Fountain Park.
Cool.
Certainly.
How many times have you been champion of Ontario?
I don't know.
Okay.
3 or 4, maybe.
What was your favorite thing about reigning your first reign?
Honestly, reigning was not what I was about.
Okay.
I was really, sorry, I was really only concerned, I wanted to be a duke.
Okay.
It's just a long time ago and my memory isn't all that clear on it, but I would say that my real motivation was being a duke, and didn't think a lot about reigning and what that would mean. Not like when I hear the people discuss it today about all the responsibility. I was in my early 20s. I didn't think about it. I just wanted to be a duke.
No, I think that's a good insight. I mean, so all right. Those are funny.
Yeah. There's Dak and Linda Farover. And Red Beard. Names are fading away. There we go.
Super
cool shades for some reason.
So I just thought this one was funny.
It is funny.
Yeah.
And my Conan sword.
Super cool.
Areas.
And then this
the fleet.
Yeah. This is just really like Ontario history, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So. Yeah. Out with Stormcrow and the fleet.
And then that's just you more recent. Checking out Arminius's helm, Hugo's work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So let's talk about the Ontario crown.
Sure.
It is very iconic. The shape is very different than any other crown in the known world. And I'm just sort of interested in what your inspiration was. And
well, okay, when I made this, I had to have been 23 or 4, something like that, somewhere in there. And honestly, I had barely been doing metalwork for maybe a year. this was totally winging it. I'd never done anything like this before. This was the biggest project I'd ever taken on. And I got the commission from Lynn the Fire Rover. And I think it was like, we'll give you a couple $100 for each. And so I just went to town on it. And the shape of the points, I don't know where that came from. Maybe, possibly, some kind of memory of like Greek shields or something when I was a kid. But that motif reappears oddly, like in architectural details I've done in our house. It's just something that appeals to me. That kind of spear point kind of thing with the cutout sides. I don't know where that comes from.
Interesting.
But then I just tried to incorporate all the symbols, from Ontier, and either oak leaves or strawberry leaves. The Lion of Ontier, obviously, the laurel wreath. Yeah. And what I could pull off at that point with my very inexperienced skills.
Well, I think it's amazing that you say that your skills were intermediary at this time, because I mean, this is a work of art. Like, I think I have the queens too, where you can see that the roses are there instead of the oak leaves.
Right.
I guess there's some
very ambitious for my level of ability.
Yeah.
That.
Well.
Of course, they're famously very heavy and uncomfortable. And
I think every kingdom has heavy crowns. So these again are some of, you didn't do all of these, right? Because one of these is Torgul.
I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think what Torgul did is he rebuilt one of mine.
Okay.
But it could be his.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly those are
very cool.
I'm gonna lean in there. And the one in the front, that one's my final version that I made for myself.
Very cool. Here's one of the bags that you made.
Right. That was a thing I did. It was another thing along with the helmets. It was kind of one of my things.
Yeah. I think I actually have one. I love the clasp. I think it's an old one Fiat had made for an ex-girlfriend that he passed along.
The rotating one.
Yeah, the rotating clasp, super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something newer that you've made, right?
Yeah, I made that for Thorgir the Thirsty.
And go ahead.
Oh, it's a Grendel Red Troll Damascus blade, and then Thorgir wanted me to do sort of a takeoff on a finish knife, but be a little loose with it. So I did cherry and maple stack tilt, and the brass throat, and then that's buffalo horn. It's just all
it's so beautiful.
So I have it right here.
So people,
he sent it to you for repair.
What did you say?
I just said that it's actually right here in the house right now. He sent it back to me to do a little tune-up on it. It's funny to see that.
So people know you're still making metalwork, right? You have an Etsy shop?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people what it is so they can look you up?
It's Patrick Conlon Metalsmith.
Okay. And you still make your really cool Sutton Hoo stuff and belt buckles.
Oh, yeah. I still do all that cast stuff, and then I'm still doing commissions, and not so much anymore, but yeah.
Cool. All right. I think you did the plates for this, right?
I think, yeah. And then I did everything except the dome.
Okay.
All the metalwork, I think, except the dome on that one, yeah.
Oh, very cool. I like the eyebrow thing. That's cool.
Yeah.
Sort of a Thor's hammer nasal.
Yeah, that was something I sort of did on a lot of them. Was the Thor's Hammer dancing.
That's cool. Okay. Just a more recent work.
Yeah, that must be Torgul's, right?
Yeah, it's got the griffins. And another beautiful sword.
Yeah, that one is a Grundle pattern welded blade. And he sent it to me and said, go to town on it, man. And I want, this particular hilt, the Kilnamaine sword that's in the National Museum of Ireland. So it's all cast bronze, and then
Well, cool.
fine silver wire and copper wire all soldered onto it, and it's got silver and copper inlay, gold plating. Just kind of went to town and tried to replicate it as closely as I possibly could.
Very cool. I'll stop sharing. There we go.
Right.
Well, thank you for taking us through that. You do such incredible work. I mean, it's just amazing. And you still merchant at some events, right?
I haven't been to an event in years at this point.
Yeah. I'm remembering like a 12th night that maybe you were at, but maybe that was a couple years ago now.
Yeah, I guess I dropped by the last 12th night that was here. Yeah, I didn't dropped in and out. But.
Yeah. Okay, so let me see, where were we? Have we not talked about anything you would like to talk about? Is there a story that I should have asked about that I didn't?
No.
No?
That's good.
Okay.
You skip the applications, so I'm fine with that.
All right. So I figured I wouldn't ask you to bring a sword because you haven't been fighting, and we talked about how you put your sword back together in the day. But I would like to go through like the final 10 with you if you're cool with that. All right, cool. Okay, so I sort of switched them up because you're like my 60-second person I've talked to, and I decided, hey, like maybe we should do some different questions. Right. So if money were no object, what metal project would you make?
Metal project?
Yeah, like what sort of art project would you do?
If money was no object, I've done a replica of the Gundestrup cauldron, and I would do one in Sterling.
Is that the brass cauldron that you had up on your website for forever? Oh, it's so beautiful.
Well, I would do it again, and I would do it in Sterling.
Wow. Wow.
And I'd go fit in the correct places and do all that, because that's.
So His Grace reminded me that I didn't ask you about the whole Western Crown story when you went down and finaled.
Which Grace?
Sven. But I've heard the William of Lucky story from other people. Do you have a version?
Well, let me hear your version.
My version is a bunch of Ontarians went down and all fought for Bulwark, and you finaled in West Crown with William the Lucky, and there was no way you were going to win. That's the short version.
What do you mean by no way I was going to win?
That they weren't going to let a foreigner win. That's what I heard.
Oh, that's interesting.
What's your version?
It was Chuck, Alfred. It was Alfred, Dak, and me, and we just jumped probably into Dak's Fiesta and took off, and we were just going to go down and fight. And we had no illusions. We thought, we're going to the West. We're going to get our asses kicked. And that was not what happened. And I got into the finals with Lucky, and Dak and Alfred and I sat around and talked. And I thought it would be pretty funny to impose upon them a foreign barbarian king from their just lost principality. And wouldn't that be funny? And then cooler heads prevailed, and I hadn't asked my lady if I could be king of the West. We hadn't asked anybody in Ontario if they wanted to be a retinue driving down to the West all the time. And then the Westerners were pretty clear that they were pretty hostile to the idea.
Right.
So I did not wish to win.
Okay. But fun. I mean, obviously not prepared, and raining wasn't really your thing anyway. But how, what kind of a cool trip to take with your friends and just have a really good day.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that
cool. was the time we found out that tents aren't soundproof too.
I don't want to know that story.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It wasn't that. It was. It was just we suddenly realized that we were being a little loud discussing the tournament.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You see.
All right. That's a much tamer story than my mind went to.
Yeah. Right. We tell any of those stories.
Okay, so let's get back to the 10. All right, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Anywhere in the world? Oh, wow. I'd go to any number of places in Europe, I suppose.
I think I would go to the Hermitage. Get lost in it for a couple weeks.
Right.
Yeah. If you could talk to anyone from history, who would it be?
Anyone from history? Harold Hardrada, William the Bastard, or William Godwinson. I would like the inside scoop, I guess.
Cool. Let's see. I'm trying to put them more to you. What's your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Well, all of them.
No, just one or two. All of them? Oh, okay, that's the answer. All right.
Yeah, all of them, but I'd say, seriously, I like Ridley Scott's medieval and period films quite a bit. I'm a huge fan of Rob Roy, and Knight's Tale is exactly my experience in the SCA. So, fantastic films.
That's cool.
And I recommend read The Long Ships by Frank Gunnar Benson if you're a Viking.
Okay. The Long Ships?
The Long Ships by Franz Gunnar Benson.
All right. Franz Gunnar. I have to write it down.
There you go.
All right. So when you were retiring from fighting, who were some of the people in your kingdom that impressed you fighting wise, innovative wise?
Gunnar, Sven, maybe a guy named Rourke, possibly.
Oh yeah, Rourke from Avicall.
Yeah, I didn't, when I was retiring, I sort of wasn't going onto the lists and keeping up with things that were going on, and I don't really remember much. There are some guys, and I don't remember their names, honestly, and I don't want to just flounder about and say, do you remember the guy? No. But I definitely was, as I was going, I definitely was having a feeling that the level of fighting ability is increasing, that there are guys coming in now who are big and athletic, not big and fragile like back in the day, and who were super fast. And you know, there was more a feeling of that as I went out, that people were definitely raising the level of competition quite a bit.
Yeah, I've watched some video from, I don't even know how far back, like maybe late 80s, early 90s, when Davin was a squire. And I think maybe Sven was a squire too. And it's a squire's tourney. And you can tell just by watching them in that tourney that they're the next generation, just because
Right.
Their mechanics and their speed and all of that. It's pretty phenomenal, actually. And watching video of you, um, you guys, I think you were throwing harder than we are today, and you had such beautiful flow, such beautiful flow. So I'm not trying to stroke your ego. I just I don't think I've ever actually seen you fight in person, and the video is phenomenal. So I missed out. All right. What was your favorite tournament format?
Double elimination.
Double elimination.
2 out of 3 final. I mean, that's pretty much what we fought. So it's the only one I know, really. Round robins are annoying, and single eliminations are 2 tenths.
So Duke Johan from the Outlands wants to know how it felt to be the best.
I don't think I was the best.
Okay.
I think I was in a group of maybe 5 people that I felt could beat me on sort of an equal standing. You know, Radnor, obviously. Yeah. You know, maybe Brian.
Paragon.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you would go to Estrella, who would you seek out for pickups?
Anyone?
Anyone? You didn't have like your eye on a prize?
Just no, whoever. And pickups for me was just, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
It's just, I just kind of, I don't know. I fought all the time.
Yeah.
I fight anybody. So.
Who was your favorite person to fight?
Favorite person to fight. Well, I mean, I like fighting Thorin. I like fighting Dak because we were really well matched. He was a lot stronger than I was.
It's a strong guy.
Yeah. And yeah, that was another one from that Crown in the West. Is that it probably wasn't true, but it seemed like we ended up drawing against each other a lot. You know, I'm sure it wasn't true, but I got Dak and I got each other, and we looked at each other and said, "Well, let's just show them how Ontarians fight." We went out there, and I'm not sure that bits actually flew off our shields, but they might have. You know,
Epic.
That was yeah.
Yeah. Fun times.
Right.
Who are your favorite people to watch fight?
I would watch Radnor fight whenever I could, because
yeah, he's also a very beautiful fighter.
Yeah, Radnor definitely.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Estrella story? I can end on that.
Well, I mean, the classic is Steingrim in the golf cart.
I've never heard that.
Steingrim in the golf cart?
No.
Yeah, well, we're wasted out of our minds, and we're wandering around on the warfield, and this golf cart with, whoever they are. What do you call them? The men or whatever they are.
Okay.
Yeah. They come rolling up, and of course they come rolling up and you can hear bottles rolling around in the bottom of the thing. They come rolling up and they're like, what are you guys up to out here? You look like trouble or something like that. And Steigerman says, you're not the droid you're looking for.
Nice. That's a good one. So is there anything, like the last parting thing or anything that I missed that you would like to tell us?
I just, it's really amazing how far the SA has come to me, right? It was, it was so different in the past. And, when I go on Facebook or whatever and watch all the stuff about the crafts and I watch the fighting and the costuming and the whole thing. It's amazing and it's super cool.
It is.
That's what I'd say.
Yeah. The evolution has been astounding.
Yeah.
I have actually one more question. Were Skepti and Skaggy your only squires?
No. Dak was a squire of mine. Cliff was a squire of mine.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I really appreciate you participating. It's been really great to hear about Ontir and about how you revolutionized the High Guard, because, I know you did, but I've never heard the story. So thank you for taking the time to share your journey with us. All right, cool. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Your Grace. And then tomorrow I am talking to His Majesty of the Middle, Felix. So that should be fun too. All right, see you later. Bye-bye.